been so grateful to all of you for sharing. This week has been a wonderful week. We are beating the algorithm. So keep your sharing. Make sure you tell your friends, text tags. We have Dr. Jennifer Gramith in the classroom today. I'm going to go ahead and start the recording because it's so important that we get as much in today as we possibly can. So here we go. We are going to be talking about DNA. So fasten your seatbelt because Dr. Jennifer Gramith is in the classroom. It's time to open your mind, and the best way to open your mind is to dance. Here we go.
The Lillian McDermott Show.
We love, we fear, bridges we burn, we make mistakes, then we live and learn. When life gets tough, and it seems like your best ain't good enough. If you're in need of hope, you know where I'll be right here. Right here, and when you need a friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here, waiting for you.
This is the place you can always turn to when you need a friend. The Lillian McDermott Show. To reach out to Lillian, visit her on the web at whenyouneedafriend.com. Now let's all learn together. Here's Lillian McDermott.
Hello, my listening and viewing friend. It's so nice we can meet each other on the air on this beautiful, best day ever. And for those of you who are tuning into the classroom for the first time, please know I've been waiting for you. This is a safe place where you can go to when you need a friend. It is my commitment to provide natural ways to heal, and it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening and viewing friend, will feel empowered to embrace a new truth and live the life of your dreams. As you know, Dr. Jennifer Gramith is my Swiss Army knife of health. She does a lot of things. She has brought us information on the endocrine system, has taught us how to energetically learn what's going on in your body. She even helped us with a gallbladder cleanse. She is now going to be helping us with the M-Cube detox experience. She's coming on. I've got the date. October 18th, she's going to be in the classroom teaching everybody about emotions and the lymphatic system and how mold affects all those things in our body. And so now we're going to talk about DNA. So a lot of people have a lot of fears about the DNA. A lot of people test for DNA, but I believe they're using this in an abusive way. 50% of people that have the BRCA gene will not get cancer, right? 50% will, but nobody looks at the will not get cancer. They only look at the will get cancer. They take their breasts off, they take their body parts off, and they still. So what is the difference? How can we use DNA testing for the greater good? How can we use it so that we ourselves can take charge of our life, empower ourselves, and make the right choices? Now, we're so grateful that Dr. Jennifer Gramith, she's one of the partners of the classroom. The one, whenever I say, go to our sponsors, check out our sponsors, that's Dr. Jennifer Gramith. And she has been with us for a while and supporting the classroom. And I want all of us to listen up, support her the way she's supporting the classroom. And since it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, I am so grateful that Dr. Jennifer Gramith of Rightway Health and Wellness in Georgia is here to do just that. Welcome back to the classroom, Dr. Jen.
Thanks, Lillian. It's just a pleasure, as always, to be here, and I enjoy and look forward to this every month. So not so much talking about genetics. Genetics is a very complicated topic. But I am honored that you asked me to speak about this. It is something that comes up quite often in my office with patients now getting genetic testing through 23andMe and other types and wanting to understand what they're at risk for.
Mhm.
And so, most of us think that the DNA knowledge and information has been around for a long time, but it's very short-lived. It wasn't even discovered until 1953, where you had an American microbial geneticist, I think his name was James Watson, and Francis Crick, who I think he was a physicist, got together, and they're the first ones to really discover and visualize the DNA. And then, so we have always been under the impression in mainstream medicines that, your genes just run the show. It's all about the genes. And, if your genes aren't expressing correctly, then, it's just dumb luck. You're going to develop these chronic illnesses. You have no way of stopping it. And just like you said, that's why. And this is the dangerous part of it, because we know so little about this field, the methylation pathways. We know more than we used to know, but we still don't know a lot. And you'll see that here in a minute. But, we take, one mutation or one genetic SNP and one gene, and, we connect the dots to a chronic illness like breast cancer, like the BRCA gene. And so then we just say, well, let's just take off everybody's breast. And, that's going to solve the problem. But that doesn't get rid of the expression of the gene. You may not get breast cancer in the breast, but it's going to develop somewhere else. So that's bad medicine. And so, but, that was our first inclination and our first, knee-jerk reaction to solve a problem. But the more you study genetics, and I do not claim to be an expert in the field of genetics at all, but I do study it. And I study it because of the understanding now of epigenetics, which wasn't really looked into until 1970. And so it's, short-lived, but epigenetics, epi means above. And so, what components around the genes can affect the expression of the gene. So now we actually have control back in our hands of how our genes express. Do we need to shut them down? Do we need them to express express certain enzymes to create protein? So that's what DNA is designed to do. Your DNA is developed from four little nucleotides. And so it's 4 little letters, stands for adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine. And so those 4 little nucleotides make up your DNA.
Can you repeat those again? Because
Yeah.
you know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Remember.
Tomorrow, I'm going to look at my notes. I'll go, no, what was that again?
Adenine is the first one, so it's the A. Guanine starts with a G. Cytosine, thymine. So those are the 4 nucleotides that make up your DNA strand. Okay, and so your DNA strand wraps itself around 4 proteins. So DNA is, if you think of DNA, it's just your computer, your hardware, and it's what gives signals and messages to the other proteins and creates proteins in the body. Proteins are everything. Your hormones are proteins, your neurotransmitters are proteins. And so everything goes back to proteins, which are large complex molecules that play a critical role in your structure, function, regulation of all your body's tissues and organs and glands and all of that. So it's very, very important, but it's, the DNA is just one part of it. Okay. And so the DNA does not change. As far as we know, the DNA stays the same. Mm-hmm. The genes attach to the DNA molecule that is wrapped around 8 proteins. So there's this little globs of proteins, and the DNA is just wrapped around it. So if it's wrapped around very tightly due to environmental toxins, then the DNA and the genes attached don't express well. So you have a decreased expression of these certain enzymes that are needed that the genes produce. And then it's stringed together. So you have all of these, we start with one cell and now we have 70 trillion cells.
Wow.
So it's a big deal. It's very complicated, but it all goes back, to those 4 letters, the A, G, C, T, which is the nucleotides. And so when they are arranged in different codes, like you have the AGG, it may produce this amino acid, so there's a table called a codon table. Codon, and it will tell you like G, like different, like GAA will create glutamic acid. And so it's a code that when arranged that way in the DNA will produce this protein. Okay. And so if one of the letters, when it is being copied into another cell, so when your cells divide, your cell has to take that DNA and has to make a copy of that DNA for the cell to be able to do anything. So, but if it gets one thing screwed up, one letter out of place, it may, not always, because some of these, like GAA produces glutamic acid, but so does GAG. So if one gets screwed up and it goes to GAG, it's still going to produce glutamic acid. But if it goes to GGA, then it produces glycine. So it's producing something that it shouldn't be producing. And so you'll have an overexpression of glutamate. If you get an overexpression of glutamate, it makes you like, high-strung, psychotic, and perfectionist. And if you don't get enough glutamate expression, then you will have no or no drive, or no reason to live. And so you can get these imbalances, and that was what makes up some of the issues that a lot of people have. So you have these processes going on in your body, and I know it just sounds insane, and it's very confusing, but it is very critical that there's nothing that gets in the way of the DNA being copied into the cell correctly. And so there lies epigenetics. And epigenetics is where these genes, due to environmental toxins, can block the expression and shut off these genes that should be expressing certain enzymes. So that's what genes do. Genes express certain enzymes to convert certain compounds into other compounds. So I'm going to show you this.
So before you show anything, I just have some questions.
Go ahead.
So you're talking about, this is all a process. You have the DNA and the genes coming together, and if it's too tight, then this will happen. And if it doesn't release the right compound, it doesn't happen. So if, let's say, like, as you said, the something is not the right outcome, can it be alleviated? Because you're saying that someone could be high strung, perfectionist, all that, and could say, oh, well, you have a DNA gene that we can just like unwind. Yeah. Can we do that?
Yeah. So that's epigenetics. So
that's part of the epigenetics. Okay, go ahead.
That's the epigenetics. So the DNA does not change. That coding sequence you are born with, it does not change. But the epigenetics, the gene expression. Around the DNA, that can change, and it can affect how your body responds. And so that's what we have control over. And so that's what we're going to get. And that the dysfunction happens there due to deficiencies.
Got it.
Okay. So certain deficiencies, and then, or environmental aspects. Stress also, because it triggers certain inflammatory pathways, and inflammation can affect these gene expressions.
Amazing. And, I was just talking with my friend Julie before we did the class today, and we were talking about how even functional doctors at time don't look at the basic stuff like, is there mold? Is there metals? Is there microbes? Is there, like, you and I were talking off the air about, if you have mold, will a probiotic work, or will a digestive enzyme work? How will it work? There's so many things that we don't know.
Mhm.
And you have to become your own medical detective, your own MD, your own medical detective,
Right.
in order to figure out some of these things. So let's say, you're talking about epigenetics, and we know the beauty of epigenetics, and many doctors don't even look at that factor of the epigenetics. So go ahead and continue sharing about that. And if anybody has a question, type your Q in, write your question after that. So if you have any questions for Dr. G.
So I'm going to show you what a methylation pathway map looks like. And this
Okay.
is just one example. And so this is just a small little smidgen of a picture of what all of your methylation pathways.
Brace yourself, because this is a small thing. But
Yeah, this is
huge.
This is big. All right, so let's just talk about, let's say for instance, you have high levels of homocysteine. Now, before we started, you had asked me about the MTHFR and the coagulation. So it has everything to do with homocysteine levels too. Okay, so here is a methylation pathway. So there's a urea cycle. There is a neurotransmitter cycle, a folate cycle, a methionine cycle, which is what we're going to discuss, and a transsulfuration cycle, which we're going to discuss a little bit on that. And they're all connected, as you can see. So homocysteine is not a bad thing. You have to have some homocysteine to convert into glutathione, which is your mother of all antioxidants that helps keep down free radical damage, right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens with us is that homocysteine levels need to be converted into methionine, which is converted then into SAMe, which then, goes into the creatinine production, but then goes into SAH, which is another compound, back into homocysteine. So this cycle has to go on over and over again. And if that cycle can happen, you can have normal levels of gene expression around that cycle. So if you look at this diagram, homocysteine is the inflammation contributor when it's overexpressed, and can be a problem when it's underexpressed as well. But if homocysteine cannot be converted because you have MTRR gene that's not expressing the enzyme needed to convert it,
Mm-hmm.
then it can't turn back into methionine. And then you can't turn that methionine into SAMe. Then what happens? It turns into hydroxy radicals. And so you start this inflammation. So you're trying to do everything right in your diet and things like that, but you still keep churning up high levels of inflammation. In labs, your homocysteine levels are up because it can't finish that methylation pathway. But you have backup pathways. And so if it can't go here, because let's say you don't have enough B12, so maybe this MTRR gene is expressing the enzyme needed, but you don't have the B12. It takes both to convert homocysteine into methionine. Then homocysteine is going to have to figure out another pathway to try to convert to methionine because it's critical for health. And so it will try to go up through this pathway. So it'll try to go up, and this gene, the PEMT gene, relies on choline. And so if you have enough choline, maybe homocysteine can be converted here into trimethylglycine. And then you also have to have the expression of the BHMI gene enzymes to turn it to dimethylglycine, because trimethylglycine cannot be converted to methionine. It has to be converted first into dimethylglycine and then methionine. and then it can go around and produce SAMe, and then, go in that direction.
So when
Okay.
you're talking about SAMe, I've
Mhm.
seen supplements called SAMe.
Right. Yeah.
Is that the same? Can you duplicate SAMe with this and kind of force the situation?
So a supplement is going to increase the SAMe. All right. And so it's not SAMe, the actual supplement's not SAMe, but it's going to actually help with the expression of SAMe. So there's certain nutrients. So you'll see that a lot of the neurotransmitters, you're not ingesting the neurotransmitter, but the supplement that's needed to help that neurotransmitter, that protein to develop. And so that's what you're seeing. So yeah, and SAMe is critical for good mental health. I mean, and it's critical for muscle, strength and growth, and because it has everything to do with creatinine and creatine and all of that. So everything's like tied together. But what happens a lot of time when you have the MTRR or the MTHR, which is the folate, the methylfolate, and you have that gene not expressing or it's mutated, then you can't, complete this pathway. And so that's what, a lot of people are being diagnosed with, and their functional doctors are actually even going ahead and supplementing the methyl B12 and the folate for them in hopes that, that will fix the problem and finish the pathway. That may be a big mistake, because I'll show you a pyramid in a minute, because if you don't fix the phase 2 process or the phase 1, if that's an issue, you may be creating more inflammation in that individual with supplementation. So there is a process that you have to go through to fix these methylation pathways. That's very complicated. But when homocysteine starts to build up and it's not doing good as far as methylating through these pathways, it's going to drop down. And it's going to need B6 in order, and it's going to need the CBS gene, which secretes CBS enzyme, to turn it into cystathionine and then eventually into cysteine. And for cysteine, it will go into either taurine, sulfite, or glutathione. So you want some of the homocysteine level to go into glutathione, because it's the mother of all antioxidants and it counters inflammation.
Should people be on glutathione?
Only if their body knows what to do with it. So that, this is the issue. So if somewhere upstream from the glutathione, you don't have the enzymes expressed by the genes to convert the critical nutrient into glutathione, then you can't just supplement with glutathione and call it that. You have to fix what's upstream, what's wrong upstream first. Yeah. And so this typically, homocysteine it's easier to travel downstream. So it will usually build up a lot and it will go straight down into the sulfate line. And that causes the oxidative inflammatory disease process. And so I see that a lot. I see that homocysteine levels we watch for people because of cardiac disease, but also for cancer. It feeds cancer. So homocysteine is definitely tied into that. But it's all because of this free radical damage in the body. So that's kind of, just one cycle that can get messed up with MTHFR and homocysteine, because like I said, they're all connected. If you can't convert into glutathione, then you're going to develop high levels of histamine, which can cause mast cell disorder, which you've heard of. People are
we're going to be talking about that with mold. Yeah,
extremely sensitive. It could be something going on in their genetic pathways, their methylation pathways that could be causing that. So, I say all of this to help people understand that the reason that we really are diving in more to epigenetics, more than just learning about the DNA structure and how all of that works, is because we can actually have impact. And so if the problem is back up here that the genes are there and they're expressing, but you don't have enough B12. So for this methylation pathway to work, you have to have B12, you have to have, B12 is the primary nutrient, okay? So you have to have B12, but there's also vitamin C, there's other folate nutrients, things like that, that you have to have in your diet. And if it's absent, you're not going to be able to complete this, because it takes the nutrient plus the enzyme to transfer homocysteine into methionine. And so, and if you can't transfer it, if it can't go into methionine, then it can't go into the other critical nutrients your body needs to have optimal health.
Yeah, I am, this is very fascinating, but I have some questions. I would love to, well, first of all, the question is, where is Dr. Jennifer Gramith practice? She practices in Woodstock, Georgia. So she also does telemedicine. You can find her at 404-474-2100. That's Rightway Health and Wellness. When I see that chart, and for those of you who are on podcasts, I apologize to all of you. Maybe you can just watch the chart as she's speaking, but you did a really good job of saying what the pathways were and everything. But it's still like the emergency broadcast system. You know, have you looked at somebody and they like, they check out because it's so complicated? And it's like you're talking about these paths. How do you know if these paths are working or not? Do you look at it through DNA testing, and how are they able to tell you that? Because they are taking blood, they're taking a moment in our life, and they're creating this whole picture that looks like the universe.
Right.
So how do you know?
So let me show you again. So this is actually my methylation pathway.
Oh, that's your methylation pathway.
So when you get your genetic tests done, they're going to look at all this and they're going to map it out. So anything that you see on here that is orange is a dysfunction, or there's a variant. So if I was to click on that, it would show me the variant associated with the MTRR gene. So I have a variant. So you hear variant, mutation, or SNP, right? You hear those three terms. It all means the same thing. It's the same thing. And so mutation, people really understand that there's a dysfunction. So these variants they're not absolutely saying that, yes, you're going to develop this problem, because the more variants you have, like if you have two variants, one from mom, one from dad, you're more likely to develop that issue, but not always. So because there's other pathways.
And because of epigenetics, you can
right. You can
work around it. Yes.
You can work around it. So when you get your genetic testing back, this is what I get. Okay. I get all of these reports that look at your pathways. So each one of these will have a map for me to examine to tell me how your body handles and transmits and converts iron, and where the problem is. So it is these maps are specific to your genetic issues and your SNPs that show up. And so it'll also give me a pyramid that will tell me what's priority. And so we talked about earlier, people with the MTHFR gene that's not functioning properly, that they can't absorb, certain types of B vitamins and things like that to carry on the methylation process. This this is where most functional doctors will say, hey, let's just give them methyl B12 and folate. But if you have an issue downstream that you don't correct first, like this phase 2 sulfation, you're actually, when you give them that, you're going to create more inflammation, blocking more of the detox pathway. So it can be
but you need to trust your doctor, because you know, when I'm looking at your chart here, and I look at oranges, yellows, purples, but then I see that red phase 2 sulfation, like you were talking about.
That's my issue. Yeah.
That's your issue. But what does that mean? I mean, so you have to really trust your doctor to know what that means.
And if your doctor has been trained, and more doctors are getting trained in epigenetics, but still there's a lot of doctors who don't know a whole lot about this. And, you know, your first thought, you're deficient. This is a better source. Let's start with that. And it's trial and error. That's why it's called practicing medicine. And you start giving them, you know, you start supplementing with them, and then their symptoms worsen. So any of you out there that has had that experience, this is why. Because phase 2 detox is your liver. And so this right here has to be corrected before you can start with nutrient supplementation for, you know, specific gene expressions. And so if you look down here, red would be the most critical variant to work on. And then orange would be the next, and green is, you know, typically probably not that much of an issue. And so this analysis takes in consideration a symptom survey that the client fills out, the genetic testing, and then labs. Okay. And so it creates this from all of that. And so you get this, you get a copy of this when we do a genetic, and then you and I typically go through line by line. See, I just click on this. This shows all of the variants.
I'm so glad you're trained on this, because this is
and I'm still being trained on this, and this is evolving weekly. And so it's constantly, we're learning about more SNPs, more possibilities, more, you know, so it's a never ending story.
Okay.
But it does give some insight for those very difficult clients that when you don't, when everything you do doesn't seem to be helping. So, you know, they have a good plant-based diet, because you get a lot of these critical nutrients. You've heard me say over and over again, there are critical nutrients your body has to have to function properly. So, you know that, we all know that, but what are those nutrients? And so, and how does it affect our gene expression? How does it shut off certain genes from expressing that are overexpressing, you know, when they shouldn't be expressing? And so it's all about balance. And so you can definitely shut on and off these expressions on these genes. And you can't change the DNA, but you can change the gene expression, which is what causes chronic disease.
But even if you are trying to, let's say the MTHFR, because this is how this whole idea of doing the class, I got an email from Francine. She says, can you help someone with hypercoagulative state with MTHFR and 3 genetic mutations? And I'm like, okay, what is this? What is this? You know? So I know that I have, because I did DNA testing a long time ago. Mm-hmm. Now, I didn't have someone look at my DNA testing and go, okay, well, here's the pathway and here's that. And no, they said, okay, you don't have the ApoE for whatever. So I don't have the predisposition for dementia, but that doesn't mean that if I abuse my body and have shots like Dr. Christiane Northrup called it the juice. Yeah. She called it the juice. With that metals, and if I'm eating out of cans and I'm, you know, doing the things that I can't experience the expression of what looks like dementia or cognitive decline or anything like that, even though I don't have the gene, genetic, the gene to say. So that was that was nice because my mom has advanced stage dementia. So that was a relief for me.
Right.
Then also I have MTHFR gene mutation from both my parents, not just one, but both. So what does that mean for me?
That increases your risk of chronic illness. And so that mutation, that variant, you got both. So you would, instead of having one single nucleotide, polymorphism, you have two. So you're more likely, still not definite, because as you saw, you could take other pathways. And so you can work around that, and your body will naturally try to do that. But if it's blocked because you've had exposures to lead, or it's blocked because you have had exposures to glyphosate, or you're under extreme stress all the time and your cortisol levels are always up, then that can block the gene expression. Okay. And then let's say you don't eat well, you don't have a good diet full of, B12 and your amino acids, because these, amino acids we've always talked about in medicine of being the building block of, your body. And it's true, because the amino acids is what makes those, strings of amino acids of what makes those proteins. And so if you don't have enough of the amino acids in your diet, you're not going to be able to build these necessary proteins to, do the job, carry the message to the cell, what it needs to do. And so,
wow, you weren't kidding. Well, you weren't kidding when you're saying this is so complicated.
It's so complicated.
Okay, so with that in mind, I'm interested in the testing and what you can do with the test. See, I got the test, but nobody really said, this or this. I do know that after I took that test, I looked back at my vitamin Bs. Anytime I take vitamin B, I can't sleep.
Right.
I am like wired. So if I ever want to pull an all-nighter, pump in the vitamin B. Or if I drank coffee in the morning, which I don't drink coffee anymore,
right,
it would hoard it, release at 2:00 in the morning.
Right.
It's like my body hoards certain things. And I didn't even know that was associated with MTHFR.
And other genes too. So
other genes. So if I were to do this testing, which I'd be curious to do this testing, is it just going to show me what my predisposition is, or will it also show me what best supplements I could have? Because now you know what the pathways are.
Right.
How can we use this test for the good of each individual, instead of being fearful that you're going to get cancer or you have this gene or this other? I like to use it for prevention and say, okay, this could be a possibility, but if you change your diet and if you do this and do that and change your thoughts, change the way you live your life, then the expression is null and void. It's going to be normal.
Yeah. So if you couldn't use this information to change things, there would be no use of this information. And so it is critical to know these things, because it explains the why. Why is it that when I drink caffeine that, it works against me? So, there's all these studies that say, oh, drink a cup of coffee a day because the caffeine in that actually helps to decrease heart disease. Well, it does in half of the population. But in the other half of the population who has this mutation, this variant that makes them either a fast or slow oxidizer of the caffeine, then it could be devastating and do the exact opposite. And so you see that, going on. And it goes back to epigenetics and how the person handles and processes that compound into another compound. And so with you are a slow oxidizer of caffeine because you don't have the gene expression, the proper gene expression. And so it just kind of hangs around. And then finally, wakes you up, and it can make.
I get a lot of stuff done at 2:00 in the morning. I will tell you that.
But that's when your body needs to be sleeping and rejuvenating itself.
Exactly.
So it works against you. So yes, you should stay away from that. And knowing that, you would just stay away from that. So
I do.
Gives you the information that you need, just know if you you have oxalate issue or a histamine and zonulin issue that cranks up inflammation, and all of these things. I mean, it's not bad to have glutamate or, glutamine, but if your body cannot convert it to the next compound, then it builds up, and excess of anything creates free radical damage. So it's all about keeping balance. And like I said, with glutamate, you can have a lot of mental, emotional, side effects from that. With too much, not enough. And so that may be that little piece of the puzzle that your practitioner just couldn't figure out, because they've got you on a healthy plant-based diet and giving you certain nutrients, but nothing seems to be helping. I don't think that everybody needs to have this genetic testing, but those that are really struggling with trying to find the answers of why their body is just not doing what you want it to do, this is the last place to look. So we start with
the last place to look. I would think this would be the first place to look.
Because you can look at all of this, and if you don't change your diet and your lifestyle, this is not going to change at all. But if you change your diet and lifestyle, most of these methylation pathways will be corrected.
Wow.
So
we have the power. We have the power.
You can look at all of this information, but typically it's with me, because as a practitioner, it's the last thing I want to do is to go through hundreds and hundreds of pages and SNPs and variants and look at all of this information and try to, puzzle everything together. And it is like doing a 20,000 piece puzzle.
Oh, that easy.
But the software, my software does most of it for me. So thank the Lord for that.
Maybe for lunch, let's do a 20,000 piece puzzle. Yeah, that's not going to fly with me. Now, did you answer the question for Francine? The hypocoagulative state with MTHFR with three genetic mutations. Can you work with them with that? I mean, is that something
yeah, most definitely. So you can, if you know the genes, okay, so the genes that are involved, that have the variants that cause the dysfunction and what they're connected to, but you have to look at those pathways. So you have to go to the methylation map, and I don't have it memorized. So you have to go to that map and you have to see what it's connected. So maybe it's the MTHFR. She has an issue with that. She knows that. It could be the DHPR, or it could be the NOS, which is there's different genes associated. So it could be, she has to know the names of the genes, and that will tell you what happens when they overexpress or underexpress. But typically homocysteine has something to do with the coagulation issue. And so when you have the MTHFR and you have elevated homocysteine, it's a recipe for disaster.
If they refuse to change, that's a big if, right?
Right. If you don't have so then you have to determine, is it from a deficiency? So, for the MTHFR, you have to have folate, you have to have B12, you have to have vitamin C. There are certain critical nutrients that have to be there in order for it to complete the cycle. And niacin is another one. Niacin is very important. And so if it's not, any one of those are deficient, if you're deficient in those, then you're not going to be able to complete that pathway.
So the deficiency is then tested in other products, right? In other labs. So that's why you look at this last. So before we talk about the actual testing and what the cost is for the testing, I just want to encourage you to go to whenyouneedafriend.com. For those of you who are asking me, where can I find Dr. Jen? This always happens. You're not the only one that wants to spend time with Dr. Jen. So whenever you, if you want to spend time with Dr. Jen, go to whenyouneedafriend.com. Every time, every Sunday, you will get a blog, and all our teachers are in that blog. So make sure you subscribe, because as I said at the beginning of the classroom, we are going to supersede, we're going to go overcome the algorithms that are keeping this information suppressed. Our classroom they're trying to suppress our classroom. And so I need your help. I need for you to text and tag and tell people, share this video with everyone, because the manifestation or the expression of what's happening in your body could be from gastric issues to heart issues to exhaustion to depression, anxiety. It's amazing. And so if you have someone that works with you, and if you want to know, okay, so this is something that I'm interested in, please subscribe. And while you're there, like and follow me on social media. If you have a thing about social media, the classroom is live at whenyouneedafriend.com. So you can watch us from there as well. So no excuses. Check out my sponsor, Dr. Jennifer Gramith, and support her the way that she's supporting the classroom. You can also go to my Shop Now bag. In my Shop Now bag, other things that you can do is some testing that we have for the M-Cube detox. We've got an M-Cube detox experience with 10% off, 50% off, 15% off. For labs and everything that you want to look at for there. The mold, you could have mold that will change the expression as well. So we're doing the M-Cube detox experience. That's mold, metals, microbes from treatment to recovery with support. That starts on September 27th. Dr. Gramith is going to be one of our teachers on Tuesday night. I am really excited to hear what she has to say when it comes to us taking our health back. This is an experience. You get to experience it how you want to experience it. So if your body is not strong enough to do the detox, then at least learn with us so that when your body is strong enough, you can do the detox, and you'll have all the videos to help you go through it too. Dr. Lee Cowden, who is Dr. Jen's mentor, is going to be overseeing this experience with all of us. So check that out at whenyouneedafriend.com. We also have the body code. That's going to be November 5th and 6th. We're excited about that. We've got a new venue, thank God, for favors. We've got a new venue for that event, so it's still on, and it's going to be a beautiful time, November 5th and 6th. We also have you can become an enrolled student in the classroom. So check out how you can support the classroom, whether it's $1 or $1,000 donation once or twice, or one-time donation or monthly donation. Please consider, it's the cost to run the classroom now has exponentially increased. So we need your help, whether it's your time, your talent, your treasure. If you don't have any treasure to share, then share this video. That's a way that you are helping us out. So today we were talking with Dr. Jennifer Gramith. You can find her at Rightway Health and Wellness. You can find some of her products, or most of her products, at shoprightwayhealth.com. The phone number, if you want to schedule an appointment with her or one of her practitioners that she has at Rightway Health and Wellness, you can contact her at 407-474-2100. So I want to thank you for supporting the classroom, Dr. Jen, and thank you for bringing this information, and you're so generous about this. Now let's talk about this testing, because testing can be very expensive. So let's look at what is the name of this company, and
So the company that I use, because, and I will say this, if you already have had genetic testing, like with 23andMe, all you need, you don't need to redo it, because it's the same. Okay. So all you have to do is send me the raw data file, and you can go on to 23andMe and you can click, to download the raw file, to download it and then send it, I think, in a PDF form. You can check with my staff to find out. But we take that and then we drop it into the software, and then, voila, you have all this information about yourself. And so it creates these maps and these pyramids and an action plan. So it actually will suggest the critical nutrients your body needs. Wow,
I didn't know that.
It will show the chelating nutrients that may be needed due to environmental toxins. So you'll get to see that. So it just really takes the guesswork out of it. And so, and it tells you how to do it and what order to do it, because on the pyramid, it blocks it out. You always start with the foundation and you work your way upwards through that period. You can't treat it all at one time. But it's very interesting. Unfortunately, our data through 23andMe and some other companies have been sold to other countries. And so I definitely don't recommend people using that avenue anymore. But the group that I use and my training went through is called Nutrigenetics. And so you can contact my office if you don't have your own genetic testing, and you can order the kit. It will be sent to you. There's two types. There's one that I use typically for children, where it takes a swab and you swab just the insides of your cheek. Very quick, easy, done method. And are people who just really have a hard time spitting, into tubes, which is the other method. So you can fill up a couple of tubes with saliva and send that in to the lab. It's a little bit less expensive, more work on your end than the swab. So my preference is using the swab. I think that kit costs $265 for the kit, or $235 for the tubes.
Wow, that's affordable.
Yeah, it is affordable. It used to be $199, but everything's gone up at the beginning of this year. So that's the new pricing structure. I charge you what they charge me. And then for the interpretation, because it takes a lot of hours of my time, and then I spend about an hour going through it with you after I share all that information.
Yeah.
We spend an hour on the consult. That costs about $595 for that.
Just the consult, not the DNA testing.
Not the DNA testing. That's just the consult, my time and the consult time.
Is that the 20%? Will that include 20%?
Yeah, they'll get 20% off.
Okay. If you enter Lily 20, just tell them Lily 20, and then they'll know to give you 20% off. So that's really good. That's very generous. This has been, I don't know if we went through everything, but we do have the Teacher's Pet Corner today. So if you have any questions for Dr. Jen, type in a Q, write your question down, and we'll read it during the class before the Teacher's Pet Corner. This seems complicated, but it also seems doable. So with the epigenetics, which we really didn't talk a little bit about, it's really changing your thoughts, changing the way you eat, think, sleep, rest. So it's a lifestyle change. Yeah. So would you say that the majority of conditions that we're seeing out there that pharmaceutical industry are treating with a pill are really manifestations of our DNA that we can fix with a lifestyle change?
Right. Yeah, most definitely. And so that's the hope with epigenetics is, that as we discover more of these mutations and SNPs and how they're all connected, that we will know what to do in order to disrupt, either shut the gene off or turn it on when needed. And so it is a learning process, but there is a lot that we already know. And we're discovering more and more genes every single day. And so, like I said, it's an ongoing, lifelong learning process, but great information has been the key in some cases to really reach that optimal level of health. There's a lot of doctors studying it just for the anti-aging aspect of it, because if you are overexpressing or underexpressing, you're going to age faster. DHEA is a hormone, which is a protein that we test with cancer patients, because if it is elevated, then we know that their body's organs are aging faster than their actual age, and we want to stop that process from happening, right? And so there's certain nutrients that you can put into the body through diet and targeted supplementation that will help with that process and actually help reverse the aging process. So
I just want to know, when did you have time to start learning all this stuff? It's
You
like, how do
know,
you do it?
I got interested probably about 6-7 years ago. So I'm
Okay.
newbie to it. Yeah.
You're not a newbie on this one. Thank you so much, Dr. Jen. Again, Rightway Health and Wellness.com is where you can find her, 407-474-2100. I am so grateful to you. And remember Lily 20, so you can get 20% your first order. And please remember, we'll be right here waiting for you worldwide at whenyounneedafriend.com. This is Lillian McDermott and Dr. Jennifer Gramith wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever. Good job. Good job. Stay tuned for the Teacher's Pet Corner. Here we go.
The opinions and advice expressed on the Lillian McDermott radio show are intended for the individual callers and guests on the program and are presented to our wider audience solely for general educational purposes. Please act responsibly and consult personally with your own medical, psychological, or nutritional expert before taking any steps to improve your life.
Okay. So the question for Angelique is, where are you located? We already talked about Woodstock, Georgia, but can you do this? So you're saying that you can do genetic testing over the phone through a teleconference.
We have a whole virtual practice worldwide now. We have offices all over, and clients for genetic testing. All I need is the results of the raw data, and we can sit down through a Zoom meeting and go over all of your information. So if some people like to travel and come see me in my office, that's great too, or you can do it virtually online.
Okay. Let me see. Make sure you type in a Q. So if you have any questions. Okay, so I see a question here, but there's no Q in front of it. Make sure that you type in a Q. Let me see. Okay, so is the gene or pathway that could elevate LDL over 100?
So that's where it's the understanding. So the gene is in the pathway. Okay, so if your gene is not expressing the enzyme, so all genes are going to do is going to secrete enzymes that help to convert one compound to another. So yes, it definitely could be that the gene is not expressing the enzyme and able to do the conversion. And that could cause your LDL, your cholesterol levels to go up. But that's not the only thing. So you have to have certain other critical nutrients in place so the nutrient plus the enzyme together has to be there to convert a compound into another compound and continue that methylation pathway. So it's a combination of things. So you have to see where is your problem? Is your problem on the deficiency side, or is it gene, or is it both? And then you have to correct it. A lot of times with the gene expressions, the problem with the gene overexpressing or underexpressing is due to, again, the environmental toxins. So then you would run a panel for heavy metals and for chemicals, and you would see, what's high there, and then you would detox that out of that. So you would move that from the equation, and then the gene should be able to express if it has the right nutrients. So, it is complicated, but simple too. It's just like a recipe. If you're cooking, if you don't have an ingredient, then it doesn't come out quite right. So, or if you substitute, sugar for salt, it's not going to come out pretty either. And so, like I said, if the coding, in the DNA, when it's copied, gets one thing wrong, it can shift that recipe from, producing the sugar to salt, and then you get a bad tasting,
Cookie.
Yeah.
A salt-filled cookie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. So I don't know if this is a question or a statement. One can test homeocysteine by regular doctor, also MMA for B12.
Yes. So
Okay.
So when you see the methylation pathway and you see that there's a dysfunction in it, that's the time to look at your blood work too. And so let's say, for instance, I have a friend whose homocysteine levels were elevated. That's a cardiac marker to most practitioners. And oncologists, it's a cancer marker. So it depends on what your specialty is. But typically it's associated with risk of heart attack and stroke. And so but you have to have homocysteine in order to convert to glutathione. So without homocysteine and the enzymes in the genes down the pathway, you can't convert into glutathione, which is your mother of all antioxidants that counters the free radical damage. So it's important to have it, but just in the right amounts. There's a sweet spot for all of these compounds. There's a, too much or not enough. There is a sweet spot where you need to be. And most of the time it works fine, but sometimes it doesn't due to the environmental toxicity and the deficiencies that we have in this day and age. And so you're seeing more and more gene dysfunction or mutations. So
when you talk about glutathione or homocysteine, I'm sorry, when you talk about homocysteine, it reminds me of cholesterol.
It does.
When cholesterol, I remember when I had this DNA test done, my cholesterol was like 300. And I was eating raw vegan at the time. I almost fell off my chair. And he said, no, this is the best cholesterol. Look at the LDL, the ratios. He said, don't even look at that 300 number. That's good. And I was very healthy. I was feeling really good at the time. But what I was told after is that this low cholesterol crap is not good for you. It is not good for you. Can you explain a little bit more about it?
So you're exactly right. So back when I was working in the medical field, 200 cholesterol, when we would test total cholesterol. So we didn't really look at the ratios that much. We'd look at the total cholesterol. And if it was over 200, we'd put them on a statin drug. And so as the pharmaceutical industry has developed more and more statins and drugs, they have lowered the level of total cholesterol. And so forgetting that you have to have cholesterol, your brain has to have cholesterol. If you don't have enough cholesterol, your brain can't function. You can't produce estrogen. We've talked about this before. So your hormones are totally screwed up. And the estrogen issue can cause the dementia and it can cause cancer. And so it's a big problem. It's the ratio that matters, the HDL versus the LDL, the good versus the bad. And so if you have a lot of the good cholesterol and lower of the bad cholesterol, you're fine because the good cholesterol will pick up the bad cholesterol and it will not cause plaquing in your arteries and veins, which is what people associate with high levels of cholesterol. Too low of a cholesterol suppresses your immune function and increases your risk of chronic illness, not just cancer, but other types of chronic illnesses as well.
Yes, unbelievable. Okay, so I want to make sure I didn't answer this question already. Okay. Where can we get a copy of the methylation mapping diagram?
You can Google it.
That hard, huh?
Yeah,
okay.
that hard.
Okay. Is APO something connected to cholesterol?
Can be. Yeah. So, it can be. So there's different. So each gene, when you look at the genes, you'll have APO or you'll have MTHFR, and it may have, several different SNPs or variants associated with it that will have a number assigned to it. It'll say R, RH, and then the number or something like that. And so depending on the types of variants that can be connected to different things, not just cholesterol.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that I have everybody's questions. I am noticing that there is I'm not seeing any of the comments on YouTube. So if anybody is made any questions on YouTube, you can text me at 407-373-5959. Just text me your question right away, because, again, everything's been attacked, and whether it's my website or changing venues for the body code, or everything has just been crazy this week. But I'm happy to report that what God ordains, man cannot contain. So we're really excited that we are, we have Dr. Gramith here. We are learning as much as we can from each other. Hopefully, how's your gut? How is that coming along?
Yeah, this is week 3, going into week 4. So next week is the last week of it. We've had great feedback. People just loving it. Very grateful. It's been a lot of fun. A lot of people who are overweight losing, significant amount of weight. No bloating, GERD symptoms went away. I had one client who had a mystery rash that had been seen by multiple doctors and treated with steroids, and that just never really helped clear up. And so she was thrilled, to say the least, about that. So yeah, it's been a beautiful thing, and we're going to do it again in January. So
Awesome.
Whoever missed it this time can join us. I think we had 35 people who did it with us this time, but yeah, it was just really great because you're a team and you're encouraging one another.
Yeah.
You're learning, you're sharing recipes.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed doing it.
And the time goes by so quickly. It
does.
goes. So the people that are done with the gut, healing the gut with Dr. Gramith, with Dr. Jen, maybe you guys can come with us and join us with the M-Cube detox experience, because for those of you who maybe still have some symptoms, let's talk about mold and how, like, now everything I look at, how when you see a car that you really like all of a sudden, and you've never seen it before, and all of a sudden you start seeing that same car over and over and over again. Once you start learning about mold and metals and microbes in the body, all of a sudden you go, oh, well, seizures, Parkinson's,
everything's associated.
It's like, how do you know? It's like, if you look at all the lists, it's like it's associated. Yeah. So how do you know that? Because everybody said to me, as clean as I eat, how could I have mold? Well, I inhaled it. I lived in a home that was full of mold, or a garage that had mold. So what do you say to people that are having gastric issues and the doctors are calling colitis or IBS, and they're taking medications and their problems are not fixing, and the doctors are saying, oh, you can't have any greens if you have colitis or if you have irritable bowel syndrome? What do you say to those people that just is not getting better?
Yeah. Just continue to eat fast food. That's the answer. That's according to the doctor. Don't eat anything healthy. Don't eat anything live. Yeah, it makes zero sense whatsoever. So, I mean, that's a big issue. And once you start researching something, you start to see the world through the lens of that new information. And because it can be associated. And so you do have to, as a practitioner, learn how to take the mold lens, look at the person through that, and to rule that out, and then the heavy metal lens, and then the genetic lens. And so you're using, your education to narrow down the possibilities of what is the cause. A diagnosis, colitis, it's just explaining the symptom that you have. Which
is an itis, is inflammation. Itis is
inflammatory process, but it's not telling you what the problem is. And many times you'll see, if you go look up on the CDC, you'll type in insulin resistance. They can't even give you an explanation. It's just basically, we don't know what causes it. It just happens. We don't quite understand, is it the pancreas dysfunction? Is it, that the cells are blocked? Nobody knows. We do know. And we know that there are environmental factors that can block the receptor sites of the cells, and your insulin can be produced by your pancreas, and you have to produce insulin to the pancreas if you have elevated glucose, and it has to bind to take it into the cell and to bring your glucose levels down. But if it's blocked due to some environmental toxin, then it can't go intracellular, and there lies a problem. It's not the only problem. Sometimes your pancreas is just tired of spitting out insulin and not bringing down glucose, and it just wears itself out. And then you have type 2 diabetes. And so, you got to, in order to truly correct and fix the breakdown in the body, you got to know what the problem is and where it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we have a few more questions.
Go ahead.
Is MOA connected to depression, anxiety, or other stuff? I don't know what MOA is. Do you know what
MOA
MOA
is another gene.
A gene?
MOA is another gene.
Okay.
And so it can be, like I said, that's the thing. And that is probably the most frustrating thing about genetics. And because the answer is always, yeah, it could be, it might, it possibility, because everything's connected. Everything's connected. And so you got to look a little bit deeper than just one gene and one or two variants associated with that gene, because I can guarantee you that that's not the only problem. And so, yes, it can. Glutamate can be an issue, glutamine. There's the HLA. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of genes, and we haven't even discovered them all. And so, or what they do, but many of them have a lot to do with digestion and gut health. And that's why we talk about, your neurotransmitters in the gut, mostly in the gut, will affect how you think and how you feel, and depression, and, besides affecting how your immune system responds to pathogens. And so it's definitely, it's all connected. So if you have that, gene that's not expressing properly, because it can be over or under, then yeah, it could lead to that, but that may not be the answer.
And that may not be the root cause. It could be trauma in their childhood.
You have to look at everything.
Yeah, it could be trauma in the childhood. And that's the beauty of the M-Cube detox. We're not just going to look at mold, metals, and microbes. We're going to look at environment. We're going to look at the body, and we're going to look at emotions as well. And that's where the emotional part, which is what people kind of dismiss.
Right.
It's like, fix my body, fix my body.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's part of epigenetics now. That's a new study. And so, the trauma that you had as a child that you went through probably turned off certain gene expressions that was attached to your DNA. So it, doesn't produce the oxytocin, that hormone that you need to feel connected to certain people. It doesn't produce the serotonin, so it doesn't convert tryptophan into serotonin, and serotonin is that feel-good hormone too. And so you go around with this melancholy, Eeyore syndrome, and you wonder why. And it goes back to that emotional trauma that you had as a child, and not getting those critical needs met. And they've actually studied this a lot in laboratories with mice. Mice need a lot of love. And so how the parent mice loves their, the baby is by licking them and grooming them. And if they separate that, and that mice doesn't get that, then there's certain things and behaviors that develop, and they become very aggressive or very isolated from the other. I mean, it's just fascinating. And you see that in human behavior as well. We see the same things happening. And so, yeah, it could be partly a genetic issue, but it can be corrected. You can help to balance that back out with the right nutrition and the targeted supplementation. And so you can't just give up and say, oh, it's my genes, it's my fate. No, it's no longer your fate. Your genes are not your fate.
Isn't that beautiful? The first time I learned about this was in 2013. I interviewed Dr. Bruce Lipton. And I was so fascinated by him that I reached out to him, and he said, yes, he would come on. He was only going to give me 15 minutes, and we did an hour and 45 minutes together. So we split it into different segments.
Right.
I was doing a 1-hour show at the time, and he changed my life.
Yeah.
Because when you, and I can tell you that I have family members that are morbidly obese. And I remember thinking, I didn't want that. I wanted something different. And I thought that I was going to be doomed to that, because that's what they teach you, that you inherit your family's DNA, but what you really inherit are the family's family recipes. And I quickly learned as a kid that I could not process animal products. I mean, my dad would buy half a cow, put it in the freezer. We'd have T-bone steaks, every part of and once in a while, my parents would have to rush me to the emergency room. And of course, they never told them that I couldn't digest it. I had to find out about this later on as my journey continues. I'm not saying don't eat animal products, but I'm saying that I couldn't process animal products. And when you talked about the mice or the rats and how they need love and they need it reminded me of something Dr. Lorraine Day said. She said that God created animals to teach us how to treat our young.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Isn't that beautiful? Not to eat them, but to
What's so bad?
learn. Don't eat them, just learn from them. Just look at how they, they're so intuitive and they're instinctful. They have instincts. Like, you see like these nature videos of a deer drinking water, and all of a sudden the deer goes, and they leave. It's like they're like, I better get out of here. I got the heebie-jeebies, and they leave. But what do? The next scene is a lion is coming in, right? But what do? We get the heebie-jeebies. We get those emotional, like those little, like something is wrong here, and we walk into it.
Yeah.
We have lost between everything that we've been taught since the 60s or 70s or 80s. We've been taught the wrong thing. And what I love about teachers like you, and what I love about the classroom, that we're bringing teachers like you in the classroom so we can rewrite the program. Because that was the question that I asked Bruce Lipton back in 2013. If only 10% of what we do is conscious, and the 80%, the 90% is subconscious. These are tapes and recordings, from our childhood that are going through our mind. I said, how do we increase the 20% or the 10% and make it more? I thought if you could just be conscious all the time. He said, no, you need to take your subconscious mind and rewrite the program of your subconscious mind. And that's what we're doing here today. We're talking about, you're not victims of your DNA. The moment that you think you're a victim of your diagnosis, you're a victim of your DNA, once you start thinking that way, you're cooked. You're done.
Yeah, you're a prisoner.
You're a prisoner.
You put yourself in prison. And so your beliefs and we see that more and more with more and more research that comes out there. It just, continues to tell us the same story, and it's what we believe. And so, that's why I thought it was really interesting that epigenetics is, taking on the mental emotional aspect of it, and what we think and how that actually turns on and off gene expression. And so, so
doesn't change your DNA. It changes how they express.
It expresses, for sure.
Yeah. I remember one time I said that. I said, it'll change your DNA. It'll turn it on and off. And Dr. Day goes, no, you can't do that. I'm like, okay, let me say it a different way.
Yeah, we know what you mean.
She's so sharp.
I know.
She's so sharp.
Yeah.
Anyway, this has been a great conversation. I hope that in this process of us, speaking about DNA and how dis-ease is a interpretation or an expression of how we living our life and how we are pretty much damaging our DNA by living our life the way we are, that this will empower us to say, well, let me learn more about this. How can I be the co-creator here? How can I express what I truly want in my life? And so thank you so much for taking the time today, because of that question that we got back, I think it was in July, and we talked about cancer, we talked about all this other stuff, so we finally got to it. And so I'm glad that you are able to help Francine. So Francine, if you're watching today, because I emailed her yesterday, because she's the one that started. I emailed her yesterday. I said, hey, Dr. Jen is going to be in the classroom. We're going to be talking about this. So reach out to Dr. Jen and see how she can help you with your condition. And for those of you who are watching today and later on, just once again, go to rightwayhealthandwellness.com, or you can go to Shop Rightway Health. And you can say, Lily 20, I saw you on the Lillian McDermott radio show classroom, and I want my 20% off, baby. So thank you, Dr. Jen, for being generous. Is there anything else that you would like to add before we go that perhaps maybe we didn't talk about that you're like, oh man, that just brought?
Well, I mean, no, I think we pretty much talked about everything. And, the whole premise of methyl genetic nutrition is to really, help people realize that a poor diet and environmental toxins and genetic variants will, increase your toxic load and decrease the critical nutrients in the body. So by applying, these foundational principles of nutrition back into your diet, you can relieve that or decrease that oxidative stress and increase your antioxidants, and you can actually build back health, and you can, like we talked about, turn on the right genes and turn off the wrong genes that are creating and churning out inflammation in an ungodly manner, leading to all of this chronic disease. And so, I encourage people to just keep seeking truth about your body. How does your body behave? How does it react? We're so individualized, and, we can't treat people in this cookie cutter approach like we have for many years in medicine. We need more individualized programs. And so that's my hope and goal here at Rightway, is to take every client that I work with and make sure that I am addressing their needs and deficiencies and toxicities, and not just trying to do general detox. There's enough practitioners out there that do that, and that's great. And I'm grateful for that, because that can get rid of 75 to 85% of the symptoms that you have. But if you're one of those seekers for optimal health, then you got to dig a little bit deeper, and, it's not for everyone, but hopefully it's for you.
Awesome. And as I say, my registered service mark is, you can take a pill, you can take responsibility. And this is about taking responsibility and ownership.
Right.
And so I want to encourage you also to go to whenyouneedafriend.com, click on the pop-up for the M-Cube Detox Experience, and consider joining us there. And on October 18th, Dr. Gramith is going to be our teacher. She'll be sharing, and there's going to be others too. We got Dr. Lee, Dr. Thomas Levy. We're going to talk about hydrogen peroxide and how that kills mold. We've got Mike DeBoard, Dr. Gramith, Doug Kaufman, Dr. Michelle Lamassa Dawson, Dr. Joel Furman, Dr. Richard Horowitz, and I believe Dr. Christiane Northrup is going to come, but don't quote me on that one yet. But so we have so many doctors that know, these are issues, but we need to really figure out how it affects us. No more cookie cutter stuff. We're all unique, like a snowflake. Just not be a flake. We could be.
Yeah, don't be a flake.
Let's be smart about this. Let's not be a flake. Anyway, thank you so much, Dr. G.
Thank you,
Dr. Jen, and for everything that you do. And I will see you guys. Thank you for watching today. Please share this video. Go to whenyouneedafriend.com, go to Rightway Health and Wellness, and start your healing journey.